Good morning, everybody. I'm Camille Price, and this slide represents that I work for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the Hazardous Materials and Waste Management Division, where I oversee the Idarado mine cleanup and have since 1992. It's 25 years this month I've been on this job. I also work for the Colorado Department of Natural Resources, the Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety, in the inactive mine reclamation program, where I do closures of open inactive mines. In Colorado, we call abandoned or often orphaned mines inactive. And so I work with them doing mine closures, safety closures, as well as environmental cleanups. But today I'm here with my health department hat on, and we're going to talk about water quality improvements resulting from the Idarado mine remediation project. I'm going to give you a little history of what that project is, and then after my talk, Devin Hornfeld will give you a presentation about, I'm going to give you the history up to today, and then Devin's going to take you from today into the future. So I just want to point out on this slide, I'm not sure which is the pointer, they say a photograph is worth 1,000 words. So the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment have been working with the Idarado Mining Company on remediation plans to mediate or remediate damages to natural resources in the Red Mountain Creek watershed and also the upper San Miguel watershed on the other side of the Red Mountain. The project started in about 1983, where the state of Colorado brought a suit against Newmont Mining, which is the parent company for the Idarado Mining Company, for damages to natural resources, water quality, air quality, resulting from releases from mine waste. So from about 1983 to 1992, there were many investigations, environmental investigations done to support that claim. So water testing, mine waste testing, blood lead testing over in Telluride, because a lot of these mine wastes are high in lead, blood lead testing for children. So a lot of investigation went on to support the state's claim. Went to court. The state was successful in proving that there were damages to natural resources. But through an appeal process, it was determined that that law did not have the teeth to require any kind of cleanup. As a result, Idarado Mining Company worked to settle with the state to address those damages to natural resources and come up with a plan on how to proceed. So it was a negotiated settlement, and I will talk about what was done to address the water quality issues in Red Mountain Creek and where we are today, and then Devin will talk about where we are continuing to go. The other thing about this slide is, because it was a settled agreement, a negotiated settlement, and it resulted in an agreement, Idarado and the state have been working very closely as partners, if you will, to get this work done. So Idarado did the work on all their properties with their own funds, and the state had the oversight, kind of making sure that the work was done according to the specifications. And that was my role in this project. So since 1992, I've been working with the company, watching them do all the construction along the way, monitoring the water quality, and we'll determine if the performance objectives set have been met. So the other thing I wanted to mention is the date. And in 1995, those were the days before digital cameras. So some of the slides, the historic slides that I have, it might be a little fuzzy because they were slides that were scanned into digital representation. So this is the Red Mountain watershed, and you can see through here various mine waste piles before reclamation. But what I like this slide about is it shows the natural geology in the area that we're working in Red Mountain and the resulting quality of the rock, which as you heard yesterday, with oxygen and water exposure to the environment, it has the potential of creating acid rock drainage. In Colorado, we call it acid rock drainage, at least in the regulatory realm. So it's not acid mine drainage, it's a slight perception change, but acid, it's the rock that's acid. The mine didn't make the rock acid, but the miners went to the mountain because of the mineralization. There's gold up in there from their hills, it's obvious, there's lots of iron pyrite, and with that, gold, silver, copper, lead, zinc. So it was, miners went, it was obvious this is where they needed to go. They mined here because that's where the resource was. And then the mine rock taken out, crushed up, exposed to the environment is what causes some of the increased mineralization of the creeks. Talk about baseline. Obviously, there was mineralization of the creeks before mining, but the sampling that we did throughout the 80s and continue to do, Idarado continues to do, we can demonstrate that upstream and downstream of these various mine waste piles and draining mines increase that mineralization from upstream to downstream. So it's a combination, as like what we talked about yesterday. So you all know the Uncompahgre watershed, and these little red dots here show the upper basin, and that's where most of the mining is, up in the mountains, and then we go all the way down to Delta. This is one of those pictures of a page in a book that was converted to a slide. So the original plan was put together before personal computers, so it was all typed. So this is something from the Idarado. The agreement culminated in a consent decree that was sanctioned by federal court. And an appendix to the consent decree, the agreement, is the Remedial Action Plan, we call it the RAP. And that's like the cookbook, all the recipes for the various remediation requirements on all the different elements in the project. And I put this slide up here to show you that the entire Idarado Mine Remediation project spans two watersheds. This is the Red Mountain Creek watershed, and these are all the remedial element components that Idarado is required to do remediation on. And then up and over the Red Mountains into the San Miguel River Basin, we've got Telluride right around here, and then we've got the upper tailings by the Pandora Mill, and we go up into Upper Marshall and Savage Basins where Tomboy mining area is, and this drains into the San Miguel. The other thing I wanted to point out is that up and over the Red Mountains is Cement Creek, which drains into the Animas River. We heard a lot of talks yesterday about water quality in the Animas, and Gold King Mine is up Cement Creek Basin. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I like to say is Red Mountain Creek and Cement Creek, I call them like cousin creeks because they drain the eastern flank and the western flank of the Red Mountains. So when you go to Cement Creek and you try to get a sediment sample in Cement Creek, you have to chip away at the bottom because the iron cements the cobbles. You go over onto the west flank, you try to get a sediment sample in Red Mountain Creek, same thing. So the geology that's basically, oops, stopped it, sorry.
So there you go.
I'm starting back. So, the geology is the foundation of the situation we're working with. Hydrogeologic processes. The Idarado consent decree was signed in 1992. This is a timeline, and it's a very busy slide, but basically what it shows you is, sorry guys, started in 1983 with the lawsuit and all the ensuing investigations. We started construction in 1991, actually 1993. The consent decree was signed in 92. And then various components of the cleanup. So we have mine portal work where water was diverted underground in the mine to reroute water into various less mineralized portions of the mine. So it's kind of like we used to say in the old days, about computers, junk in equals junk out. Same thing with like water in the mountain. If you can minimize the amount of mineralization the water's coming in contact with, you minimize the amount of minerals in solution and coming out into the surface, into the receiving streams. So this just gives you a timeline of where we started and where we are today. And these things are pretty much finished here, and the things that we are continuing to do is annual, annual various times of year water quality monitoring to see if we've met the performance objective. Let me just back up and say the goal of the cleanup was to reduce zinc concentrations in Red Mountain Creek and the San Miguel River by 50%. That was the goal. And also stabilization of mine tailings. And we'll go into that with more detail. But those were the objectives. And there are performance objectives, there's numbers, there's things, numeric standards to meet. I won't say standard, I'll say objective, and that's will determine whether or not the project has been successful. So obviously water quality monitoring is continuing through today. Revegetation monitoring, we'll talk about that, continues. There was a part of the settlement was $1 million Idarado gave the state to use for natural resource damage restoration, rehabilitation, reclamation, or acquisition of resources equivalent to those that were damaged. That $1 million was split between the two basins, and there's still more money in the Red Mountain Creek area to be used for additional projects that restore or acquire natural resources. So that's ongoing. Compliance monitoring with San Miguel. We won't really talk about that today. We'll do that when we have this conference over in Telluride, so stay tuned. Red Mountain Creek water compliance monitoring, that's what we're focusing on. We'll talk about that. Additional remediation to achieve the performance objective. And then there's a couple more things over on the Telluride side that we're actively working on. So originally the consent decree was going to be 5 years of construction and then 5 years of establishment and then 10 years of continuing evaluation for tailings, but tailings revegetation. But in the Red Mountain area, the performance objective has not been met yet, so the Remedial Action Plan requires additional work to be done, evaluated, and to be implemented to work toward achieving that objective. And that's what Tim will continue to talk about later. So these are pictures, historic pictures of erosion on the mine tailings in the Red Mountain Creek. And you can see obvious demonstration of water in the Little Ripple wind erosion. And of course, with erosion comes sedimentation. Erosion is the transport of materials either through wind or water forces. And these are pretty close to Red Mountain Creek, so any of that sedimentation would be directed right into the creek. And with the sedimentation comes the minerals in the rock. So all these iron mountains, the miners went into the various mountains, brought the rock out, crushed it up, put it through the milling process, got the minerals of value out, and what comes out the tail end of the process is what we call tailings. And so the inherent chemistry of the mountain is what we see in these waste rock piles. And of course, the red iron pyrite can form acid rock drainage, and then the acid leaches other minerals in that crushed up rock, which obviously is sand and clay. And so we have physical sedimentation of these constituents into the atmosphere and river, and then we also have leaching and precipitation into the receiving streams. So we'll see another picture of this after reclamation, and just notice this little aspen tree here, and so we'll see it before and after later, and so just keep that in mind. So when the iron in the iron pyrite precipitates out of solution, it creates this coating on the bottom of the stream. So we're talking about the cementation. It's basically rusted iron, right? And so you know when something gets really rusty, like you do WD-40 to try to open the screw or maybe whatever. So it's indicative of that there was an acid condition, and with dilution, it drops out of solution as precipitate on the bottom. It cements up the cobble, so it impairs fish habitat, and then also there are other metals in solution that either stay in solution or drop out as a precipitate into the sediment. The goal of the 50% reduction in zinc was to create a healthy, sustainable brown trout fishery in the Uncompahgre River. Not in Red Mountain Creek. It was never intended to have fish in Red Mountain Creek or bugs in Red Mountain Creek. And so going downstream, if we can get some, 50% of the zinc out upstream, and as we get further downstream, when we get to, like, say, Ouray, the intent was to clean it up enough to have a brown trout fishery. So that's where the 50% came from. It wasn't arbitrary. It was same thing with San Miguel. However, the concentrations are not the same. There's a lot more mineralization in Red Mountain Creek than there is in the San Miguel River. It's a little more basic rock, a lot more calcium-based rock over on that side of the drainage, and we don't have this acid rock drainage coming out of the mines in the San Miguel side, and the San Miguel River does not look like Red Mountain Creek. So the performance objectives, as I said, is reduce zinc loading by 50% and tailings stabilization through revegetation. I'm going to talk about what the components of the Remedial action plan are and were completed to achieve this water quality improvement. This is a slide that shows the pre-remediation water quality data. And this is the zinc concentration on this axis, and this is the flow of Red Mountain Creek on this axis. So looking at this curve, you can see that at lower flows, we have higher concentrations of zinc in the water, and at higher flows, we have lower concentrations of zinc in the water. And this is really typical of mining areas where we see the majority of the loading, and loading is basically concentration times flow. When we have higher loading at low flows, it's pretty indicative of a draining mine system. Like the majority of the chemicals, the minerals coming into the system are resulting from draining mines. So that at low flow, the draining mines they're not as diluted by rain, storms, snow melt, runoff when we have really high flow, and so. At low flow, sorry, I'm getting confused. At low flow, we don't have the dilution and runoff, and so we have higher concentrations. If it were a mine waste erosion problem primarily, at high flow, we would see high rates because the water, everything's moving on that sedimentation into the river. Does that make sense? I kind of got a little confused on that. Is that clear? Okay. So this is indicative of pretty much a draining mine system because we see higher concentrations at low flow. If it were runoff and sedimentation, we'd see higher concentrations at high flow. So this was pre-remediation data. This is the performance objective. So we'll see a slide later on that shows where we are today, which is basically right between these two lines. And our goal is to get centered or right around this compliance objective. Okay? So I want to show that pre-remediation, we monitor at low flow, which we try to stay at below 6 cubic feet per second in Red Mountain. And we do it during the low flow period, which low flow is like in February, but it's not feasible or practical or safe to go out that. So the objective period, the sampling for the performance objective, water quality monitoring, occurs between August and October. That's what we define as low flow. And we have to take a certain number of samples in that time, not related to a storm event, that is below 6 CFS between August and October. So that's the window that we use to measure water quality objective performance on the Red Mountain site. Telluride site is like weekly, the whole year moving average. And so we start up at low flow at about, between 2.5 and 3 parts per million. These are micrograms per liter. Zinc, and we want to try to get down around 1.5. Okay, that's the objective. So how do we achieve that objective? Basically, the way I like to think about it is it's a water management operation. Water is a substance that can solubilize minerals, can put it into solution. The more acid it is, the more minerals are available to put into solution. And it also is an erosive force. So if you can manage water from coming in direct contact with mine waste or underground in heavily mineralized areas, junk in, junk out. So you try to prevent that transport of minerals in the water. So for tailings stabilization, the issue is both, right? You want to keep water from coming onto the tailings, and you also want to stabilize these very movable fine particles with vegetative cover. You've got the roots that stabilize the ground, and then you have like an umbrella. Think of like each leaf as an umbrella. Rainfall hits. You saw that slide yesterday. Maybe you saw it where the rainfall hit, and just like the Cheerio in the milk bowl. All this stuff is, on a micro level creates like a geyser, and the little fine particles get entrained in that, entrenched, and then transported. So if we can have an umbrella covering the dirt with vegetative cover, and then the roots to stabilize it, it really acts as a good method to stabilize those materials. The vegetation and the Idarado mine project, it was a new consideration at the time when the consent decree was signed. It's direct revegetation, so there's no soil caps on the Idarado tailings. It's creation of a soil with organic matter, limestone to mitigate any potential acid rock drainage, seed, fertilizer, mulch, irrigation for 5 years, and then let time tell how that vegetation is going to do. Later through the project, after a couple of drought years, we decided maybe we shouldn't just leave it. And so there was a contingency plan. If after a 5-year evaluation period, establishment period, and then a 10-year evaluation period, if the vegetation didn't need a certain cover, then maybe we would cover it with dirt. And so then it would have to be a whole mining of cover material, 18 inches on top of the tailings, 30 inches on the side slopes for 200 acres. 100 acres in Telluride tailings, 100 acres in Red Mountain tailings. It's a lot of dirt to mine, haul, and start the whole process over again. So there was a negotiated revision to this plan between the state and Idarado. We now have active management. Idarado can come in and irrigate up to the average monthly precipitation. So it's based on nature. We're not over-irrigating and fertilize, just to try to keep the system operating so we don't have to maybe go in and start all over again, move dirt, create more disturbance, so on and so forth. If at any time Idarado doesn't want to continue doing this active management, they can say, you know what, we're done, we want to give it that 10-year period, see if it's self-sustaining enough that we can just not have to actively manage it anymore. So that part's still in the plan, but in the meantime, Idarado fertilizes and irrigates at some locations. The other thing I wanted to point out was a question that came to yesterday. The side slopes were specified to be 3 horizontal. Every 3 horizontal steps you take, you go up 1. So it's a 3H to 1B slope. Some of the slides we saw yesterday, they were like really super steep outslopes. It's harder to get revegetation to establish and harder to get revegetation to hold when the slopes are really that steep. And of course, we're not working with rocky dirt. We're working with really fine sand and smaller size particles. So the less steep you can get it, depending on how much room you have, the less erosion you're going to have. It's just like a green run on a ski slope compared to a black run. The steeper it is, the faster it goes. Same with water coming down a slope. The other thing that was considered in that regard was the top surfaces of the tailings were graded into the mountainside so that all the water on this top didn't run over the side. So all of these things were considered and implemented. This is just another before and after picture of water erosion and what Idarado did to stabilize some of the unstable slopes. This is a picture we'll start today on our tour in the parking lot that is right here, relative to this photo. This is Red Mountain Tailings Pile number 4 with Red Mountain Creek, and Idarado chose to stabilize this with a rock mulch rather than grassy vegetation. The concern was if you cut that slope to a 3-to-1, it might have intersected the clay layer in the tailings. The way tailings are constructed, there's an internal clay, slimy part with an outside sandy structural part. They were built as dams, basically. And so the concern was if we cut into this too much, we might expose that oozy layer and really just diminish the stability of that slope. So we didn't want to do that. Kept the slope stable and covered it with rock, which is a really effective mulch to keep things in place and reduce the erosion potential. And you'll see when we get out there, I'm not sure today how much sun has melted it, but there's vegetation volunteering into those rock slopes. This is really detailed. I don't know if you want to know about it. This is the vegetation monitoring for the tailings piles. And basically, we have live cover and total cover of vegetation. Live cover is the living matter. Total cover is living plus dead plus rock plus rabbit poop plus whatever is covering the ground. So we have the total vegetative cover. Sorry, you guys, I'm doing the wrong thing. See? So we have total vegetation cover of 70% on slopes, 80% on top, 60%. So 60% of the ground, if you dropped an intersect, you dropped a plumb line, you'd either hit every 6 out of 10 points need to be live vegetative cover, and then for the total would be whether you hit grass, poop, rock, moss, anything that covers the ground. And then we talked about the active management of the tailings, and then we'll see this more into basically a slide presentation. This is an example. We have 5 tailings piles on the Red Mountain side. This is just showing you the vegetative cover through time 97 to basically 2016. And all but for a couple of years, the live vegetation on the top exceeded the cover requirements. And on the slope, the total vegetation exceeded the RAP performance objective. So I talked about the tailings, how they're graded. This is the top of the tailings. It's graded into ditch. These are diversion ditches. This is an upland diversion ditch, so any water coming off snowmelt, rainfall, coming off the undisturbed mountainside here will flow into this ditch. And it was decided to have 2 separate ditches, so any water coming off the tailings would flow into this inner ditch. And if this, they're separated because if this ever needs to be treated for any reason, we don't have the total volume of clean water mixed with the total volume of potentially tailings carried water, and it's just a better management system. You have to treat the whole thing. We haven't gotten to that point, so. But this is part of that hydrologic modification. I said basically we're trying to control water in a physical and chemical sedimentation and leaching perspective, and this is one consideration for that. This is just another slide showing upland diversions around mine waste, and this is in Marshall Basin here over above Telluride's down here. And also some of the work that was done to modify the hydrology was to take the creeks. So this would be Marshall Creek coming down here, right at the toe of these tailings piles. So rather than move all this mine waste here, they just put a concrete channel. They just channelized in a protective channel, Marshall Creek, so it was isolated from the waterways. So there's just some more examples of hydrologic modification. The underground work, more hydrologic modification. Half dams were built to take water under the ground and maybe pull it up back enough so it would go further back into the mine and down another vertical area. You saw those tunnels with various vertical distances. So rather than letting that water come through a heavily mineralized part of the mine, they would route it to a less mineralized, so you have half dams, and in some cases, full bulkheads to, again, send that water out somewhere else. The Idarado mine has the Treasury tunnel, where most of the water comes out from the Idarado mine on the Red Mountain side, and then they have the mill level Meldrum tunnels over on the Telluride side, so that the water comes out in one place. They can monitor it, they can keep track of it rather than 5 different places, and reduce the mineralization. So we talked about the dissolved zinc concentrations are inversely proportional to the flow rates. We talked about that already. And this is a graph that shows that. Flow on the X, zinc on the Y. And this shows where, starting up at the upper basin, some of the mines at high up in the basin, going down to the lowest sampling point. This is the performance objective monitoring point. And it also, so, by the Genessee mine, the zinc increases, and then by the time we get down to this area, it gets diluted again, it's lower. And it shows through time that the zinc concentrations have been improved because of the work Idarado did. That's all that slide shows. Again, same kind of thing with landmarks. We have the National Bell Mine, the Red Mountain Creek, Genessee Mine, and then the different gulches that come in and dilute. This is a lot of information which basically says the performance objective was a 50% reduction. We do the sampling between August and October, less than the 6 CFS to keep them low flow. We try to eliminate the effects of storm events. We graph it, and then we determine if the objective has been met if the data are centered around this line. So it's like the median has to be right on the line. So you have half above, half below. The median would be right on. So this is a slide that shows where we are today. We have the pre-remediation data that of what we measured in the 1980s, and we have the performance objective, and this is where the data wound up in 2016. So this is where we are today. We're about halfway point to where we want to be. So it demonstrates that there is some baseline flow, and that the mines are adding some contribution because the cleanup and the work that's done thus far has reduced the zinc by a quarter. This represents reducing the zinc by half. This shows we're reducing by about a quarter. So we're about halfway there. The Remedial Action Plan says we need to, if we don't meet the performance objective within 5 years after completion of all the construction work that was done, additional remediation needs to be conducted. So we need to reevaluate all the sites to see what the major loaders were, and then come up with a proposal to do additional remedial work to try to work to achieve, not try to, but work to achieve this performance objective. And when the initial investigations were done in the early 80s, they identified 12 sites that were the major loaders. After we determined that the performance objective had not been met, we went back and reevaluated. It's the same 12 sites that are still the major loaders. So there was no change there. And you can see which are the major sources of loaders. The Genessee mine, the Revegetation tunnel, the Joker tunnel, which is the drainage tunnel for the district, Treasury tunnel, which is an Idarado property, and a couple of seeps by the tailings piles. And just to make note, all these, the Genessee, Rudel, Joker, Red Mountain Adit, National Bell, and Guston, those are not owned by Idarado. Idarado owns the Treasury Tunnel. It recently purchased the National Bell, is that correct? So those are two Idarado-owned properties, as are the tailings. So the work that Idarado is doing today is testing to see how a certain technology will work on their property, and Dennis will talk more about that. So because they own the Treasury Tunnel, the water coming out of the Treasury Tunnel, that's where they're doing their pilot plant for additional remediation and water quality improvement. So basically this slide just says the performance objective has not been achieved, and that the zinc concentrations have been reduced by 20 to 25%. Of course, we want to get down. So because we haven't met the performance objectives, there's a contingency plan. What do we do if we don't meet the performance objectives? So when the people who wrote the consent decree and the remedial action plan in I don't know when they started, it was approved in 1992, so it was a couple of years in the making, negotiations, citizens, advisory councils, it was a lot of back and forth. It was negotiated. They came to an agreement in 1992. They had to foresee what might happen in the future. If we don't meet this objective, then what do we do? And then what do we do? Try to plan for, contingency, failure. What if it doesn't work? What do we do? So the contingency plan for Red Mountain Creek was what I said: additional water quality evaluation. What are the sources of significant zinc loading, and what do we do to get the zinc out? This shows basically, like I mentioned before, the primary contribution to the load is the portals, and then we have the sieves, and then we have non-point source. How could that add up to 121? You figured. So I could go into it on this. 93% of dissolved zinc loading originates from 9 discrete main sources, and we saw that in that bar graph earlier. And so Idarado is working on a proposal to address how we're going to get the next 25% of the zinc out. And I'm going to end my talk with just showing you some of the sites. So this is the Genessee mine drainage. It's the big mine right across from the Treasury Tunnel overlook. I'm on close to the top of Red Mountain Pass, and you can see what's coming out of Red Mountain. It's no surprise, right? What I like to say is that the mines, when all those tunnels were driven into the mountain, they just created the path of least resistance for water, right? They're designed to drain because the miners didn't want to work in wet conditions. It's cold, it's wet. And, so water, all these cracks, faults in the mountain, it all drains to the lowest point and follows the path of least resistance. So that's why, boom, right out all these tunnels. And when you plug one up, it's going to find the next least path of resistance. So it's kind of like that Dutch boy in the dam. You bulkhead one, you pretty much have to know, or you'll find out. Revegetation portal. I wish I had a bigger picture of that. The mountain behind it is like a ferrocrete mountain. It's beautiful. It's just like. And this picture shows what Idarado did as part of the remediation. The water coming out of the tunnels put into concrete ditches. This is kind of hard to tell because there's a little bit of rock in the ditch. But this water on some of these mines are so acid that Idarado lined the channels with an epoxy to try to keep the concrete from etching away. Yeah. The Joker Tunnel, this is, we see some beautiful algae. Algae growing in this water. And these strands of algae, as you go through, they actually pick up some of the minerals that are coming out of the water. It's kind of like biological treatment. And then where it used to be before the mine routed this water into the concrete channels, it's now like an old Brillo pad. You know how old Brillo pack rusts? It's like fibrous. It's like walking, you like sink into it. So it really collects a lot of the iron and a little bit of the zinc out of the water. It's just an organism that thrives in those conditions. It's a beautiful thing. Treasury Weepline, the water that comes out of the Treasury tunnel now goes into an infiltration gallery. That's part of the treatment, some of the water treatment processes of the Idarado Mine Remediation Project. Water filtration into the ground, the clay minerals absorb metals of concern. And we see that the Treasury, the Meldrum, the mill-level tunnel on the Tailings side, part of the hydrologic control. Red Mountain Adit, National Bell, High Loader. Guston, some seeds at Red Mountain Tones Column 2. Additional work that needs to be done to determine what additional remedial measures are going to happen. Evaluate the source of the water, what can be done there, which we've talked about line channels, realignment of existing drainages to keep the water away from waste rock, removal of waste rock to keep away from the channels. It's all about keeping the water away from mine waste. We can consider, these are additional considerations. They're basically the same considerations that were thought of at certain locations in the original plan. Bulkheads, water collection systems, infiltration. So we're waiting for additional data from water treatment at Treasury, see if we can get some of the minerals out of the draining lines, since that's the primary source of the metal loading, and additional work that may be done after that. So that concludes my presentation. I just want to say that I will be retiring from state service at the end of June, and my replacement is Ross Davis. So he'll be the Idarado project manager for the health department, and you can direct any questions to him. This is his second day on the job. So
take it easy on me.
So anyway, and then Devin will talk about the additional work from here on forward. So any questions?
Thanks for your years of service.
It's been my pleasure. It's enriched my life. It's part of my essence. I'm very thankful, and I'm so glad it's working out.
We're going to try something a little different with questions here. Have you come to the microphone, and then we have to repeat them.
Has New Mine done all the funding of this, or did other mine owners help with the funding, especially Frank Baumgartner? He's got some of the big polluting mines.
Frank Baumgartner and Idarado settled at the very beginning, and I think, I'm not exactly sure how it worked. Frank, is Larry still here? I believe there was a settlement. I think Frank paid Idarado a certain amount of money, and Idarado's committed to cleaning it up on those sites. And Idarado even paid money, they put money in an account for my salary all these years. So the state, it's not state tax dollars paying my salary, it's Idarado money put into the state account to pay for all that time.
I don't know if we'll reach that far. Maybe halfway.
While we're waiting for the question, I just want to, this is my Where's Waldo slide. Like, where in this landscape are the tailings? Can you see them? You can see them, but if you weren't tuned into it, maybe you'd be like, what's that mountain flat?
Camille, thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay.
I have heard, and if my information is inaccurate, you'll correct me, but in the Treasury tunnel, I've heard that there's been diversion away from Telluride over to the Red Mountain side. And if that's true, why?
It's the opposite.
It's the
Diversion from the Treasury to the Telluride side, from the Red Mountain to the Telluride side.
And why is that?
The infiltration system for the Treasury to penetrate into the ground. Of course, in the mountains, there's not a lot of bottom land, right? There's not a lot of flat land on the bottom. with a lot of dirt. You know, we've got some dirt over rock and very limited flat bottom land. So infiltration area where the Treasury would report to have the capacity to infiltrate the volume of water. So it's pumped over, it comes out the Meldrum Tunnel, which has more of an infiltration gallery. So it's a water management. Anyone else?
Hi, Camille. I was curious about, and I'm sorry if I missed this talking, you said it, the range of compliance dates. I imagine that's partly driven by just when it's in the sample. But if there were other drivers, because we see significant compliance variability with the low hardness affecting for table value standards with the calculation. And there's no hardness in the runoff, so then metals are more.
Yeah. The way I understand it, I didn't design the plan, I just came in to implement it. So my understanding is that part of it is a safety issue. To get up to Red Mountain at the low times. And then we saw that portal picture where somebody had to like dig through 15 feet of snow to sample, what was it, the I think it was, I don't remember whose talk that was, but you know, the amount of snowfall. So it's a safety issue, logistic issue. And the performance objective is not tied to a table value standard. I asked Agnieszka the question yesterday, why is that segment not included in the impaired 303D list? The Water Quality Control Division did a use attainability analysis and determined that there was no aquatic use in that segment. A, because of the physical cementation of the cobbles, there's no bugs. The bugs can't like burrow in and do their thing, and so the fish can't, you know, get in there. But the pH of that creek is like 3. It's just not the physical aspect, so it's not tied to a table value standard. Neither is it tied to a table value standard over in Telluride. It was its own negotiated settlement. The state, the health department, the AG, and the Department of Natural Resources, our natural resource trustees, signed off on this negotiated settlement. Part of the negotiated was the cleanup level. So it's not tied to it. So it's kind of its own special deal. And I'm kind of running into Devin's time. I don't want to do that to him. So if you have any more questions, maybe you can ask Devin or ask me later. Okay.